Welcome back, dear viewers. You're still watching Nile Cruise on Nile TV, and in this segment we have a very important topic that we're going to be discussing. And of course, dear viewers, Islamic architecture comprises the architectural styles of buildings associated with Islam. It encourages and encompasses both secular and religious styles from the early history of Islam to the present day. Early Islamic architecture was influenced by Roman and many, of course, other architectures and all other lands which the early Muslim conquests conquered in the 7th and 8th centuries. And in this context, dear viewers, we have more to talk about, and we have a very special guest, Mr. Hisham Essaawy, and he is an interdisciplinary designer and interior architecture. A very good day, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Architect Essaawy, what is it that defines, in your view, and you studied Islamic art and you had a master's in it. So if you were asked the things that distinguish Islamic architecture over other architectures, over other styles, yes, what would they be?
Well, actually, architectural styles differs from its background. So firstly, we started with the cultural styles, and then when we're coming to religious background styles like Christianity, like Islam, in this case, what differs really Islamic architecture is its philosophy, the philosophy behind it. So for example, the Christian styles, in the beginning of the Christian era, like Romanesque styles or Basilic styles, we can find a lot of symbolism in the style itself. You can find the cross, Jesus Christ, the icons, all of this stuff. Yet the Islamic architecture as a religious-based style is different, and it's unique in each territory that it was entered. For example, you can find it's really different in Egypt rather than Morocco, rather than Indonesia. And in Egypt itself, we're having like 4 different architectural styles of Islamic architecture styles, like Fatimid, Mamluk, and also Ottoman style. So, and each one has its own characteristics, unique characteristics. So I believe that philosophy is the main thing that is behind or that differs the Islamic architecture than other styles.
Clear.
Sir, what are the main features of Islamic architecture in Cairo?
Okay, so firstly, we need to understand that Islamic architecture in Egypt or in Cairo started with when the first Muslims entered to Egypt. And the background of the Islamic architecture that comes from Arabia area, that is basically based on the main architectural method of Prophet Muhammad's mosque, that is very simple in construction and in style too. When Islam enters the civilized countries like Egypt, like Iraq, like Iran, like other countries, it was very influenced with the main civilization that was there. For example, in Egypt, we're having a huge history in architecture and also in other professions like woodworking, like other handicrafts. So when it entered to Egypt, it took some time to be totally influenced with the Egyptian handicrafts, and then it developed its own thing starting from the Fatimid era. So if we're talking about the Fatimid era as an Egyptian architecture style, we can find its unique style of using this kind of non-developed minarets, and also using the old Byzantine columns. So in Fatimid style, you can find there are no Islamic columns. They weren't developed yet. So you can find a beautiful mosque, like Al-Azhar Mosque, by the way, or Al-Aqmar Mosque in my street, and you find this interesting Islamic architecture style with Christian columns. And there are some columns are having crosses, even in Azhar till now. So this kind of cosmopolitan way of designing that time, it was very, very interesting. Also using calligraphy, Arabic calligraphy, that is decorating the top of the architecture style itself. It's always decorating the top, because the Arabic calligraphy always represents either the Quran phrases or maybe some kind of important wordings that we want to influence the other with. So we have to use it on the top of the interior of the architecture itself. So we're using, in Fatimid era, we were using the Kufi style. In Mamluk era, it was different, so we were using Thuluth calligraphy style. In Ottoman, it was different, so we were using Diwani calligraphy style. So that's why there are a lot of important different characteristics for each style, even inside Cairo itself.
Cairo includes roughly 800 Islamic monuments, including, of course, mosques and water fountains and schools, each reflecting the architectural styles of every Islamic era in Egypt. Beginning with the Muslim conquest by Amr ibn al-As, of course, in 693 to 642 in the 7th century. How did architecture develop in the Islamic Cairo?
Okay, firstly, let's begin with Amr ibn al-As when he started the first mosque in Egypt and in Africa, of course.
It's in Old Cairo, of course.
Yes, in Old Cairo, in Fustat. Of course, there is another interesting story about the Fustat itself.
Tell us the interesting story.
I want firstly to mention that, yes, it's true that Amr ibn al-As mosque is the first mosque in Egypt, yet it's not the one that we're seeing right now, because they were using the way of construction that they were using it in Arabia. These guys were not professional in building. They were not having this kind. So they were building with simple materials. So Amr ibn al-As mosque was built with very simple materials like mud, and also this kind of wood lumbers, and some very basic material. And when the flood starts in Egypt, it comes like when it starts to flood in every 6 months in Egypt before Aswan High Dam.
Used to bring it down.
Yeah, every single year. So it was well known that Amr ibn al-As they start to renovate it time by time. When Ahmed ibn Tulun came and took role as the Sultan of Egypt that time, and his background was coming from Turkey, and he was originally born in Samarra in Iraq. And Samarra stands for, is an abbreviation for the Arabic term Surra Man Ra'a, because of the beauty of the architecture there. So he was having this fascinating dream of building some kind of sustainable mosque. And of course, mosque at that time is showing the power of the country itself. It's not about the religion, it's about the power, because it was a religious country at that time. So when they started to build it, he asked for an architect that can build a mosque that will not be drawn by floods or will not be burned like what happened in Amr ibn al-As mosque. That's why, and I'm quoting, this is exactly what happened, they brought him a Coptic architect. Until now, we don't know if the Coptic architect was Muslim or Christian, because at that time, Egypt, or Egyptians, by the foreigner rulers, were called Coptic.
Yes.
So they brought him a Coptic architect, and they built...
And of course, many Egyptians had all the right, whether to convert into Islam or to
exactly.
or to remain as Christian.
And it was the right name for Egyptians that time, Coptic. So they brought him a Coptic architect, and they started to construct the famous Ahmed Tulun Mosque. This was a miracle of construction that were using the old techniques of Egyptian architecture at that time, and then after a while started to develop their own way, especially when the Fatimid era starts to evolve in Egypt.
Sorry to interrupt you,
yes,
but sir, is it the Mosque Amr ibn al-As, there's no any plans to renovate this very
happened,
important...
Yes, this happened several times, and this happened also at the Ottoman Empire era. So the recent one...
Nowadays, as we're working on renovating most of the...
It's an Ottoman style. It's not the real Amr ibn al-As mosque style. And you can see it very well when you check the minaret. The minaret, the Ottoman style minarets, it has this kind of pencil-shaped minarets. So you can see it very well. It looks like a rocket. It differs a lot from the Mamluki era minarets, which was the peak of the Mamluki era, the development of the minarets themselves. Because this was another story in construction and architecture. And it has also a story about the shape itself.
So when you personally see a minaret, you know automatically from...
Sure.
So a rocket is Ottoman.
Yes,
Yeah.
rocket
We're
shape.
trying to learn.
We call it, yes, yes. We call it pencil-shaped minarets.
Yeah, it's very obvious.
Yeah, so this is Ottoman. The octagon shape minaret is Mamluki, and it starts with an octagon. It starts with the square.
Yes.
Because this means in the philosophy, I told you about the philosophy before this.
Yeah.
So this means in the Islamic philosophy, the four ways of the Islamic. Yes.
Al-Hanafiyya, Shafi'iyya,
Exactly.
Al-Hanbaliyya,
So it
and,
starts with
yeah.
a solid base with four a squarish shape, and then it developed with a cantilever, and this is a very interesting thing in the architecture, a cantilever balconies into an octagon shape. And the octagon shape refers to the 8 angels that holds Allah's throne.
Yes.
And then it develops into this very tiny peak, which we call it in Arabic al-Jawsaq, which refers to Sidrat al-Muntaha.
Wow.
So it has a journey. So the way that they were thinking of building the minarets.
That's the Mamluki.
That's the Mamluki era. That's why we're calling that Egypt is or actually Cairo is the town or the city of 1,000 minarets, because minarets were very developed in the Mamluki era.
What about the Fatimid minarets?
Fatimid minarets were not developed the right way. We're having in Al-Hakim Ba'amrillah Mosque, for example, what we call as mabkhara. We don't know yet if it's a minaret or it's a dome. It's something in between. It wasn't developed yet.
Anything defines the Ayyubid minarets?
Well, in Ayyubid, we're having a very famous Ayyubid dome, but at that time, at that certain time, in the Ayyubid era, before Mamluki era and after Fatimid era, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of architecture monuments, because at that era, Egypt was involved a lot in other military stuff and facing the Crusades on its borders. So, for example, we can find the Citadel, Cairo Citadel, as a monument for architecture that shows the other military architecture style. Yet we will not be able to find a lot of minarets or other things. The most famous thing is the Ayyubid dome in also my style.
Architect Al-Essaawy, what about the minarets in Al-Masjid Al-Haram or
Yes.
in Mecca or in Medina? I'm sure a lot of people, including myself, would want to ask this question.
Yeah, these are on Ottoman style.
Ottoman.
Yes, because and also the green dome thing, all of these touches were developed in the Ottoman style when Saudi Arabia was under the Ottoman Empire era. And also they tried to make it as the same main philosophy of the mosque itself. The same main philosophy was start with a main squarish, what we call as sahm or fina, or actually courtyard. So it starts with this squarish courtyard and surrounded with 4 corridors with ceilings, and the most, or actually the deepest corridor that is having al-Qibla inside it.
We can see this in Sayyida Nafisa, for instance.
It's in every
Cairo.
mosque. This is the main principle that starts with. It starts in Masjid al-Haram in Mecca and Medina, and it's developing all over the world. And when it comes in Turkey and other European styles, they started to make some ceilings for the dome, for the courtyard itself, because of the rain. So they were using the culture of the country that they entered to.
I have one final question. I
Yes,
know
please.
that we're out of time, but I
Yes,
must
please.
ask this question. And it's about the Andalusian
Yeah.
architecture, that beautiful architecture. I want to know, and I guess also many viewers want to make sure of, how did the mix happen to give us this beautiful architecture?
Okay.
The mix between Islamic, of course, and European.
Yes, yes. Well, we will have a lot of different stories about this, of course. And we were talking about in the Indonesian architecture style. We need to see that it has different phases. So firstly, it was the Umayyads style, and then we became to Dawlat al-Muwahhidin and other
Yes.
styles. So this kind of integration between the two nations at that time, because there was no differences in religions that time. It was a law that we use each one, even Muslims, Christians, Jews. Anyone is very welcome to this new country to build in it. So it starts with this, but of course after 800 years, it starts to have this kind of problems, and then we can find the results right now. But it's a beautiful example that you said, of course, about the Indonesian style, because it's mixed between the European style and the Islamic style with a new taste, which is based on Indonesia. It's not European, it's not Islamic, 100%. It's not Arabian.
Yeah.
It's Indonesian.
Andalusia.
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Hisham Essaawy, interdisciplinary designer and interior architect. We had the pleasure, of course, and
totally mine.
to have you with us in today's episode of Nile Cruise. Thank you so much for your knowledge.
Thank you for
It's been a joy and it's been informative.
Thank you very much. The pleasure
Thank you
is
so
really
much for
being
joining
here.
us
Thank you.
here on Nile Cruise. Dear viewers, this was this segment of Nile Cruise. Stay with us. We'll be back again. Me and Mohammed Abdurrahim. Stay tuned.